Then let us begin. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome. My name is Professor Anita Dashiell-Sparks. I am the Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and the Vice Chair of Performance for the USC School of Dramatic Arts. And it's yay for SDA. Welcome to all of you here in our newly christened and opened Stopgap Theater, and we send a warm welcome for those of you that are with us today via Zoom. So, to kick off our time together, I want to begin with a land acknowledgement. We wish to acknowledge that our campus and our city are located on historical Tavangar, the land of the indigenous communities of the Los Angeles Basin. We pay our respects and gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. We honor their traditions, their identities, and stories, which are far too often ignored and erased. We thank you. And today, this fabulous industry and identity series that is hosted and facilitated by USC Asian Pacific Islander Faculty and Staff Association. Can we give it up? This is their signature series of industry and identity, which invites leaders to engage in a candid conversation about how their API identity affects their career, their journey, and how it's impacted the choices in their lives. So today, we are excited to hear from Professor Amrita Dhaliwal, an award-winning, yes, we can hear it, an award-winning Punjabi American comedian, an arts leader, educator, and devising artist based in Los Angeles, whose work spans across multiple mediums from stage, TV, and film. And so it's with a great honor that I get a chance to introduce friend and colleague, Professor Amrita Dhaliwal.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming out here. It's rare that we get to gather like this, and I think the intimacy of this space, I come from the theater, so I think spaces really dictate how we feel comfortable arriving into them. But for me, the intimacy of this space welcomes an intimate and honest conversation about journeying through this world. And as I look into the room, I see diverse faces with many different identities present, visible, and the ones I can't see as well. So I know that there were some questions that were provided in advance. Maybe I could start with those, if we'd like. Yeah? Everyone, wait for it. They're coming. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. By the way, I'm Megan Chao. I'm the chair-elect for APIFSA, and I'm also an adjunct faculty member here at Annenberg. It's nice to be here with you today, and thank you all for joining us. Let's kick off with your early influences and your background.
Sure. So I think Anita said this in my intro. I am Punjabi, and that's from, yes, there's one Punjabi person that silently wooed, which is not very representative of Punjabi culture. We're quite loud, and actually if you see two people speaking in Punjabi, if you're in Punjab, you think that they're fighting, and they're just talking. So, I think a lot of my early comedic roots actually come from the Punjabi culture. And it is a culture that most often, if you meet someone who's Punjabi, they're most likely from the Sikh faith. And that faith, all the sacred text of the Guru Granth Sahib is written in a poetic verse. So there is a lyricism and playfulness that is then exist within the Punjabi language. So it's really common to find Punjabis that are musicians, that are poets, and then also just like really good shit talkers. The best insults that I've ever heard that come from the Punjabi culture. Very, very playful and probably also harmful as a child. And it's a very direct culture. And so I think comedically too, in particular, I perform in the area of clown, but I'm really drawn to the darker side of clown, which is like the truth teller, the one who sees what's going on in the world and speaks to it. But he's not so wise that he doesn't fall into the same traps and hypocrisies that he sees in the world, like a bit of the fool. And I feel like Punjabi culture opened me up to that because they would tell you the truth. And sometimes it wasn't nice, So even if it was something like, you're fat. And it was true, I was fat. And that feels really painful, but it's also was true. So, what's that? He knows. Akash knows. So I think my Punjabi, this is something that I kind of struggle with sometimes because there's so much of our comedy is driven by English, and it's this idea that it all comes from American comedians being the funniest, but it's only because our language prohibits us from hearing other comedians. And there's so many comedic elements from other cultures that there's so much to gain from there. But yeah, I find that a lot of my comedic sensibility was formed well before I started taking clown, improv, sketch comedy. I had a point of view about the world. And then the other thing I'll say is that I think people can probably relate to in this room is that I think comedy is a way that you have to see all the different sides. And if you are moving through the world as an identity in which you are not being reflected back all the time, you are, for myself, I played a game of pretending. So I would acquiesce or pretend to be more in white culture, but I knew that there was a difference. So then I also had the other counterpoint of knowing how I really felt and thought. And the distance between the two is, I think, for me, a tension that creates either drama or comedy. So I couldn't quite embrace those two in the beginning, but over time, I was like, oh no, that's like a superpower. The fact that I can see the world through one lens and then totally acquiesce and operate in this other lens, and they believe me over here. They don't doubt it one bit. They're just like, yeah, come on in. And that is, that space right there is very funny and something to play with. And so in the beginning, I don't think I really maybe explored that, but now I really play with it a lot.
So then can you share some of your influences or your experiences that play into your early?
It's all white men. They're just so funny, and I don't know how they do it. They're just so good. I just love them. My early influences, actually, okay, so Stir Friday Nights, yeah, have a good laugh about that, yeah. Stir Friday Nights, it was sorry, I just clapped, I have a mic on. Stir Friday Nights is a all-Asian sketch comedy group in Chicago. And I am so grateful to them. At the time that I joined, Harrison Pak was, and Harrison is actually now in LA, and we all still meet up. I joined that group. And up until that point in Chicago, so this is 2007, 2008, I was doing sketch and improv. And I was not the funniest one in the room. I was really failing a lot. And even everything I was writing, it really wasn't a room wasn't holding it. So I was really taking it personally, I'm failing. And then I went to this group, and it was an affinity space. And in that group, I wrote, all my sketches I wrote were funny. They all made it in the show. And yes, and it was so valuable at that age to be around other people and the stories that I had experienced, that we had a way to tell them, to share them, and laugh at them, because they were my experience. And that was really, really important because it gave me a massive, I'll say this, I say this to my students. If you have a limiting belief, like I'm not good, if that belief puts you into inaction, like you just sit there and you're wallow, I'm not good, then it's a useless belief to have, right? And you need to interrogate it. If you have a belief like I'm not good and it puts you into action to improve, then that's okay. Don't worry about that too much. Just focus on the actions. Like, don't be so seduced by your internal world. So going back to Stir Friday Night, that particular experience gave me a real valid data point that like I am good. I am funny. I am a good writer. I do know how to build narrative story in a short way that ends with a laugh. Like it was very important for me to have that experience. I don't think I could have like self-helped my way into it. Does that make sense? You know, like I really did need the external proof that yes, which I wonder about other people's journeys. Like if you don't have that, how do you do it? I think we are in a different ecosystem now because there's a lot more representation, so you can see yourself reflected back, and that can be really powerful. For me at that time, I didn't see that. So that one-on-one experience like was very important. Yeah, but I would say that one's like a really big one for me.
Yeah, and so that goes perfectly into what pivotal moments, you know, or turning points have you encountered in your career? And that sounds like one of them.
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me though was actually probably when my mom died. She passed in 2017. And I think like something for me at that point as an artist in Los Angeles is I was just really like on the mission of like building your resume, going on an audition, doing your thing, and just like very focused. And the truth is when she passed, I had this like, death is a profound teacher. It's like you just hear truth. And if I was very honest with myself, I hated auditioning. I didn't like any of the scripts I read. I wasn't interested in telling the stories I was being asked to tell. I found them all to be very stereotypical. And I was always doing this dance of like, okay, no, you tell these now, so then eventually you'll get to tell the one you want to tell. And I was like, what kind of a deal with the unknown is that? So she passed in November 2017. It totally derailed me, as I think a death of a parent can, and a loss in a profound way. And I came in like that January, I said, I'm going to commit to 6 months with my agents and managers. I'm just going to listen. And what I really realized is this isn't my path in this moment. So I quit both of them, all my reps, and I was like, what do I want to do? I went back to my roots. And I was like, I'm a storyteller. For whatever reason, I'm obsessed with watching people. And I said this to Glenn before I got here. I was like, I'm actually kind of uncomfortable talking about my personal story. I'm more interested in talking about like the pedagogy of clown and how to decolonize it. So, yeah, and I want to hear your stories. I'm so curious how people arrive to where they arrive. But I knew that I was a storyteller, and I got kind of a simple, mundane job working for my dad. And so I had some income, and I was like, I'm just going to go back to what I know, the very small step. And I was like, I'm a creator, I'm a storyteller. So I started making a show, and all I could do was think about death. I was obsessed with it. Any conversation I wanted to know, I was like, what is your experience with loss? I was like, why don't we see like death visible like when you walk down the street? Why is it hidden away in these like funeral homes? Why don't we have, there used to be an American tradition where you'd wear a black band to let people know you're in mourning. I'm like, why don't we have that? How did they go away? Why could you, when someone passes, that body becomes a ward of the state? When did it change that the body could stay at the home? Anyways, I didn't know it, but I was making a show. And I ended up then getting into a blank rehearsal space, maybe something like this, and just started creating. And I collaborated with a friend, Gemma Soldati. We made a show called The Living Room, which was a clown comedy about death and grief. And that show ended up touring around the US and you could say the world, because we went to Melbourne and won Best Comedy. Yeah. So, that, everyone adjust. That experience, again, was like important for me because I took a leap into the unknown. I had no idea. Like, everyone was like, Amrita, first year, don't make any changes after your mom passes. Just be still, you're in grief, just stay, don't do anything. And I did the exact opposite. I was like, no, this is the most grounded and truth I see in the world I've ever seen before. Everything to that point, I could see the masks and the fakeness that we all have to engage in to survive in this weird ecosystem we've made. And that was the first time that I was like, no, this is truth. So that experience then of making the show and it being received confirmed for me something my teachers have been telling me, that the truth of comedy, or to speak to what it is that you observe. As an artist, and I want to say this about artists, I don't believe that there's the artist and then the non-artist. I think that that bifurcation is something that we've just made in this civilization at this time, of the artist and the audience. The truth is, you are all artists. We are all artists. A bird chirps, we sing and dance. So it is imperative that we are, each of us as a collective society, in touch with our artists. I think it's like imperative for our survival. But that was important for me to have that experience of the show being received well, because it validated to me, like, okay, I'm on the right path. And I have to say that that conflict is, I think, a part of the challenge of being an immigrant. For me, it has never been enough that I just feel good about it. I have a lot of guilt. I wrestle with this sometimes about the struggles that my parents went through to be here. And so I never could settle with that it just felt good for me or that I did it. It had to make an impact. I had decided that my impact has to be that I need to move the audience. It needs to have an impact in the room. So if it wasn't received well, then I would go and work on my craft again. I didn't have a monetary goal, but I do think that this, like, it needs to be meaningful is also really because of being a child of immigrants. And not that other people don't have that desire of meaningfulness, but that, like, there's so much of, like, what is the path you're choosing? Why are you choosing this path? Yeah, I said a lot there. I don't even know what I was saying.
Well, something you said actually resonated with me, which is that, when you're a creative and you're putting something out into the world, it can be such a daunting experience. What was that like for you? Did you encounter any obstacles being an API artist along this career path and putting your work out there for people to respond to?
Yes. Of course. Yeah. Of course. Look, like, okay, we do this exercise, which I wanted to do with you all, but we're not going to do it, which is I have students enter, and it's like, show us how others see you, how you see yourself, and how you really are. Now, how others see me, whether I like it or not, whether this is fair or not, is embedded within a lot of my visible identities, which is embedded within a system that has created meaning based on how I dress, how my hair is, the balance of my face, the color of my skin, appearance of wealth or not. So I'll say, for me, it was not assumed that I was the artist. It was assumed that I was the helper, the worker bee, the producer. So it is no coincidence that in any organization that I'm in, I do become the worker bee, the helper, all of that. And partially because that's like the pathway that's been paved for me. I show up into an organization, they just automatically give me the paperwork. And that has been the case in any place. I automatically become the teacher's assistant. And I think partially is because there's a bias that, oh, Amrita will be organized and reliable, whether that's true or not. So it's not that that is necessarily true, but over time, because I've just been like, yes, because I have a desire to please, a people pleaser in me, that then also found validation and belonging in being the helper and like doing everything. Over time now, I have developed a skill set of being very proficient at being able to toggle between being the organizer and like being the artist. Like I don't get stressed out at all at rehearsal, taking notes on anything for the director and then my own, then getting up and playing, because that muscle's been developed. So I'm sharing one that's a little mundane, but yeah, people see me, they see Indian, and they think maybe, oh, we can trust her to be on time or organized or reliable. Will you do that? And then conversely, like I find that when I'm talking to people that, oh, I do physical comedy or whatever, they'll immediately be like, really? And I'm like, I will kill you. No. But there's this idea that that I need to have on like a funny face or like a red nose for me to be comedic. And I was like, I will make you pee your pants so hard from laughing. But I teach this for my students too, that I'm interested in finding the way that you are uniquely ridiculous. And everybody, because laughter is a human natural expression, we know how to make each other laugh. And I'm interested in getting in touch with that. And it's different for everyone. We just happen to live in a society, again, that happens to say that there's the funny one and there's not. And I disagree. So for sure, I'm not considered funny. My hair is amazing. And it's just like, that hair cannot be comedic, but I assure you it can. But yeah, there's so many things about me that go against my ability to be received as viable, you know? I'm not considered funny. I'm not considered a physical comedian. I'd have to dress in a certain way. And I think I have kind of acquiesced to playing that part before. Like when I did improv in Chicago, I was dressing like the improviser, which we all know what that dress was like. Am I right? He knows. But yeah, there's this game of, we think it's belonging, but it's just a facade of fitting in. You know, we're just trying to fit in, and if that ecosystem says yes, then we're I'm in. I'm going to be successful. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you use these things as motivators to sort of overcome some of these obstacles then.
Yeah, and they're still there.
Yeah.
You know, they don't go away, but I think that's why for me with clown pedagogy or any of the work I do around changing how we teach, and so much of what SDA is a part of as well, is we want to change our approach, and yet the world is not moving at the same pace that we are. So you kind of have to dual path it, and that kind of feels like what my journey was. And I think the big thing that I'll say is that it's okay to feel like this is super unfair. I don't like this. I wish it was different. And gosh, I want to be careful but there are some things that I just I don't have time to fight that battle today. Yeah. Everybody get what I'm saying? Translation?
Let's talk about representation.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you address your experiences with representation in this industry and its impact? And what impact has it had on your career?
I kind of hate the representation. I meant to tell you that when you sent it. I think there's this okay, look, earlier, I do think representation is important. It's very important to see yourself reflected, right? But I'm kind of interested in going beyond representation. And I think I want representation to be specific of being able to play and tell stories in the fullest sense. Not that I just see a brown face on the camera or any Asian along, also we could have a whole talk about this, but how Asian is lumped and it's this massive group, from Southeast Asian to South Asian to East Asian to all the countries in there. And we're just like all one Asian. Hold hands. So it's like absurd. So it's like, is it enough for me that I just see an Asian face? No. Is it enough for me that I just see an Indian face? No. Because sometimes that Indian face says some like really ridiculous things. And then what am I supposed to be like? And then there's the challenge of like, because they're the first, I want to support them. But behind the scenes, I'm like, I don't agree with any of their creative choices. I don't agree with their politics. I don't agree with how they don't speak up. I don't effing agree with them. But I'm also like, change takes time, so I support you. And so it's like, representation is so sticky for me because it's like, yeah, right now, I don't know, I think we are and we aren't, like, we're always in chain. But yeah, I get behind artists that I wouldn't just because of representation, because there is an important value in having them be visible. Now, that first wave, sometimes they have to acquiesce a lot of themselves and go towards whiteness and pleasing white audiences and making fun of our own culture and our heritage for belonging. And so I'm like, thank you, I hope I don't have to. So I don't know, I think it's important, but I'm like, what kind of representation is it? And is that the path you're paving so that I have to behave like you did? So it's very, and maybe that's the truth about anything. There is no like right or wrong or yes or no. It's complicated. Yeah. We can go down the list of yes, no of any artist you all want to call out. And I'll tell you what I really think. No.
Do you want to share some of your career milestones, things in your professional journey that really stand out for you?
Okay, there was one. So there was this Punjabi Heritage Festival in Washington, D.C. This is like 2004. And I somehow, very wrongly, got added to this group of dancers, 5 of them. And they were so good. This one woman was like, I think like a ballerina. She could like leap in the air, and I swear it seemed like she was suspended for like 3 seconds. They were so good. And there was a Punjabi Heritage Festival, and this was gonna go in the National Archives, our performance, which is in the National Archives. And I was so bad. Everyone was doing, it was like pirouette, 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 and then I just like jumped in the air. And now looking back, I didn't know why, but I was the only Punjabi dancer. So it was dancers of 5. 3 of them were South Indian, I think. 1 was Gujarati, 2 were South Indian, and 1 was a white woman. She has a heritage show, I just didn't know it. And so we did the show, and I was like, how is this woman letting me do this? I'm clearly the worst dancer, like by a lot. And that is, I just always remember that show because for so long I was so proud of it. I was like, I went to DC and I'm in the National Archives. And it's like not a commercial, no one's ever gonna see it, but I made the archives. Like in my mind, I was a model UN kid and youth and government. This was like so monumental. I was like, I'm in the National Archives. I had it on my resume, okay? Any interview, I would be like, I'm in the National Archives. And then one day, I was like, what does that video look like? It is so bad. I was so ashamed that I was like, I have to take this down everywhere. It's probably somewhere you can find it. And then later, I was like, why did she let me in? And I was like, I think it was because I was Punjabi. So that's where it worked against me. She should not have had me in there. But that has always struck with me because my relationship with it, which I think is like the power of being an artist, is that, or for all of us, is like that your relationship to things change. So it's like, just because you finished a show doesn't mean it's done, you know? It's maybe done being quote unquote consumed, but it's gonna continue to inform you for years. And you're gonna continue to learn from it. So I love that one. Because I was so proud, and then I was like shameful, and then I was like, oh, well, that makes sense, you know? Yeah, that was 2004. Oh my God, yeah. I was so bad. I was so bad.
Well, you have a room full of people who are going to look that up, Chao.
You'll never find it. I think too, I like really overdid my makeup because I was like, we're gonna be on the stage. We should have stage makeup. And they all went soft, so not only was I like visible from that, but I was like overdoing my makeup because none of them came from a theater background. I was like, I know theater. You know, you really want the audience to be able to see your face. And I was like, oh, I should have like done something totally different. Anyways, that one really sticks with me. I spilled my water. Thank you.
In terms of your career and your experiences, is there anything you'd like this group to know?
How much time do we have? 7 minutes? Okay, here we go. It was 45 minutes. Thank you, Asher. Everyone, this is Asher. He is graduating. They are graduating in May with a degree in technically theater.
It's comedy, though.
Comedy. What has been my impact on your voice? No, I'm kidding. I will say, I guess I probably haven't mentioned this, but you asked me when I came in, like, were your parents supportive? They didn't really have a choice because I hid it from them. I really kept it kind of secret. And then if I would have a show, I'd be like, I have a show at... I remember I did a show at Steppenwolf for their Garage series is in Chicago. And I was like, Mom, I have a show at Steppenwolf. It's like kind of a big deal. Anyone, you can look up that theater. But it was in their garage, so it kind of isn't a big deal. But and the show was direct address in the sense that as the actors, we were like doing these monologues out to the audience. And the director was like, make eye contact. So my mom was sitting, and she was so excited. She sat in the front row, and before I went on stage, she was like, put lipstick on, do your hair. And I was like, okay, thank you, but I have to do whatever the character, whatever has been decided. And she obviously didn't agree with some of my choices because she was sitting in the front row, and she started whispering to me what I needed to change. And it was so funny because now that I look back at it, I was like, the show is kind of boring, but for that brief moment, it was so entertaining. Because there was like a show within the show of watching my mom, clearly the only South Asian woman in the audience and the only Asian, it's like clear this woman's your mother. And then my identical twin sitting next to her being like, Mom, stop talking. So I do think, like, I kind of paced it with them very carefully. And my mom and dad were really supportive because they saw me as a performer from when I was a kid, but they were just always like, have an income. So I've always had another job. And I still do, which I'm like really grateful for because I don't like being a struggling artist. Like I really like insurance. Yeah. I really like when a friend's like, I'm getting married, I'll be like, no problem, I'll be there, instead of being like, I only have $3. So I I'm like, have stability. You figure out what that formula is for you. I can't prescribe it, but I do think it's important. If you have come from a background of annuity where your parents can support you, make them do it. Our NEA, I'm serious, our National Endowments of the Arts is crap. Like, without the benefactors, without people giving to the arts, it's impossible. So it is your American right, or responsibility, to get your rich parents to pay for the arts. So I will say that my story is not necessarily this one of like, my parents were anti. They were actually supportive in their way of, but just have an income. I think a lot of, yes, you also don't know what your parents are going to say until you broach it with them. There's a way to meet them in the middle. I think the other thing I'll just say is, like, coming up as an artist, I didn't know all the systems of oppression that existed. And I want to say this carefully, but as I became aware of them, it was full of a lot of grief and pain because I could look back and see how I participated in oppressing other people in my art and oppressing myself. It's not always like white on brown in my situation, from my experience. So that journey of awakening has been painful, and all the experiences that I've had have been a part of me arriving to where I am today. So I don't know how to reconcile that. I just accept it as is. However, the only thing I'll say is I wonder, had I had all of that awareness, would it have prevented me from going in and playing? Because when you look at it, it's like, for me, the ecosystems that I'm in physical comedy and clown, it's a sea of whiteness. And I wonder if that wave would have just washed me away. And so the only thing is, like, I really now try, I just wonder, like, would that have just overwhelmed me so much? I don't know. So that's something is like a key of advice, I guess, to counteract that is to have a buddy system, have friends, like have a mentor. I'm also here to say that you can do it. It's totally possible. You just have to be very stereotypical. No, I'm kidding. So I guess that's something I will say. And I am an identical twin. Yeah. So I've never felt alone, unlike everybody else who's a single person. I have no concept of what it's like to feel lonely. I always feel belonging. No, I'm kidding. I think that would be it. Does anyone have any questions?
Actually, there was one question online that sort of taps into that. I'm interested to learn more about what sponsorship and mentorship has looked like for your career as an API woman, specifically as an educator in higher education spaces.
Well, I mean, this event is a great example of it, you know. I think USC in particular is a really strong ecosystem. Anita's been a really big advocate. The USC feels like a bubble, like this really magical bubble of support. And you're like, wow, this is weird. So yeah, USC is really special. There's a lot of advocacy within it. I have had support from a wide range of voices and identities, which is really important because I've had allyship and really big supporters that are white men, like John Gilkey, to white women like Paola Coletto, Italian white. She passed away in April of last year, and Harrison Pock. Like it's been a diverse set of voices, and so it's interesting because now you're kind of like, oh, go find a mentor. Go find someone, right? But like, I just met these people, we had a connection, and then over time, they started to advocate for me. Or I was like, I need help in this way, or what have you. But now, I don't know how you would find the person where you have that. It's quite a thing to say, I believe in you. It's a really big deal. I believe in you. I know you can do it. And then when you say that, you have an agreement to be for them, there for them in their processing of it, in their struggle of it, you know? So I believe in you. What does that mean? What are you agreeing to be there for them in what capacity? And all of these arrived over time. So then they held space for my struggles, my doubts, my actual failures, my flops, etc. So mentorship is very important, but you may not find it, right? But you can find it outside of career as well. You can find it from your mom. You can find it from your best friend. You can find it from, I don't want to say Instagram. You can. Everyone should get off of social media. It's killing us. Scandalous? It's killed the room.
This is a university environment.
I know you can't say that. So I think it's important, but I don't know if the formulaic way of finding someone is the way. Because I'll often think like you will set yourself up to like a kind of formulaic relationship, check-ins, and it's like, how will that help you in this like difficult journey? Yeah.